Yeah. So I have a background in economics, as Anand mentioned initially. So I did my bachelor's at Loyola College, BA Economics, and then I did a master's immediately after that at the University of Warwick in UK, again in economics. But then there in Warwick, I specialized to something that interested me, which was public policy. So my choice of optional modules was also public policy and labor economics and that kind of stuff. So economics is, I mean, quite broad and varied. People have study economics with an intention to work in the finance and the banking sector. Then some of them do public policy. So there's like a lot of stuff to do within that. There are behavioral economists who study behavior sciences. So there is a lot. So amongst that, this is what was my preference and my choice, and that's how I got into this. And after that, I came back to India, and I was looking for applications to think tanks, to government research projects, which I could apply to as a researcher. So I joined as a research assistant at a think tank in Bangalore called Center for Budget and Policy Studies. So it is an independent, not-for-profit think tank that works on multiple issues around education, health, social protection, governance, budgeting, and things like that. So I was a part of a few projects that focused on education and governance. And these are things that we do in tie-up with international organizations like UNICEF, World Bank, and we present to the government reports and we publish papers and such sort. So some people see this as like a pathway to a future PhD as well, in public policy and economics. Sure. Yet others make a career out of it and are public policy specialists, and who particularly pick one particular stream that they like and specialize on that. Right. After that, now currently I'm working in Chennai at the State Resource Center, which is a body affiliated to the Government of India, the Ministry of Education. And this is a project which I'm working on specifically on child marriage and adolescent empowerment. So I lead the research here, where I am in charge of conducting research in the field of adolescent empowerment, along with the government of Tamil Nadu and UNICEF, who's the funding partner for this project. So that's the role that I am doing right now. I'm really excited to meet all of you, and I'm sure that we'll have a great discussion, and you'll also have a few questions for us, and we'll be very happy to take them and answer.
Absolutely. And as a side note, I would really impress upon the audience to please answer the poll. Let us know what backgrounds you come from, what your interests are, so we can sort of tailor our discussion today. But just as an icebreaker, Siddarth, you mentioned, I mean, obviously economics is a very broad discipline. I think, you can find people in academia who've moved from economics, study in economics to academia, some who've moved into the corporate world, some who are working with the government, and some who are working in the corporate sector. So, pretty much the most wide subject you can choose. How in such a wide sector, and I know, developmental economics is particularly of interest to us Indians, because, we've produced 2 Nobel laureates from this field. But I just wanted to understand, how you made this choice of, I want to explore the field of developmental economics and public policy, and that's something that I will do well in, right? How does somebody make that choice, especially considering that the audience today is probably in second year of or third year of college and is probably facing this kind of a dilemma?
Yeah, I mean, you chance to come upon some people who are generally interested in events happening around us, right? For example, some people would have certainly, I see that some of them are from a commerce background. So people might have followed the white paper that was released by the Tamil Nadu finance minister yesterday, which spoke about the state's finances. This is one example, but obviously, I mean, other things, what is happening technologically, like what are the laws of technology that the government of India is implementing today? And okay, let's, how do we solve the education crisis? I mean, there are 100% of Indians who study in primary school, but only 45-50% who complete their class 12 and go on to a college. So do we have a solution for this? So these are questions which people have in mind. Governments have to answer these, and as a democratic, welfare-oriented Indian government, the government is answerable to the public to these questions. So this is something that might interest some people, and I guess you have the best of both worlds. You know, you're not a part of the government in full time. You obviously have a chance to do that as well when you study this. But apart from that, you can be an academician, or you can be a public policy researcher and work closely with the government in finding solutions to these problems. So if people have that kind of an inclination and thinking towards finding solutions to these issues, I think public policy is a great choice for such people. Social development, which also encompasses basically all these that I mentioned about education, health, nutrition, sanitation, and these kind of issues. So these are in India's case, they are realistic. I mean, we face this every day, and we read so much about it. Right. And generally, I think some people also have the interest in knowing about this from books. For example, you mentioned Nobel laureates. Both Amartya Sen and Abhijit Banerjee have come out with really good books, understanding India's politics, India's economy, and India's social development. Right. So these are very generic things to read. So I would urge my friends here to get a hold of such books and have a look at them and see what they've written. So these are, I think, the basic people who are interested in this kind of stuff and want to go ahead. One more thing I'd like to add is for working in the public policy sector, you really need not be from an economics background at all. You can study anything. I mean, I've had colleagues who are engineers who worked with an engineering background for 10 years or something and then moved into this field. Right. Yet others are from a science background, but then choose to do a master's in development studies or public policy and then enter this field. And so it's quite open for everybody, literally. I mean, you don't have to have a mathematical background or an economics or whatever that is. You can come from anywhere. Okay. Secondly, another thing is, like I gave an earlier example, you can choose and do whatever you want in this field. I mean, there are people who research on laws of India. There are people who research on technology of India. Okay. There are people who do it in the social sector, which is education and such sort. So there's a huge scope. You can choose and pick and choose what you like in it. And you can also be from anywhere, and you can easily become a public policy researcher.
Okay. Very ironic play of words here that, we're doing an online webinar with students who are obviously stuck at home, and here you are telling them to buy a book and read that. So, but obviously I meant that with a hint of comic timing, because obviously reading is a habit which gives you much more knowledge than any conversation possibly can. But you also touched upon a very interesting point, Siddarth, here. You said this field is open to people from all walks of life, which means, you could be studying commerce or science or maybe economics, and there's a place in the field for you. But help us understand the field of development, the development space itself, social development space itself, right? Because, what we understand from the outside is that you're a researcher, which means that you commission researchers that are funded sometimes by world, international bodies, sometimes by corporations, large corporations or foundations, I guess. But is the role primarily going to be about conducting research and then analyzing that information, or are there other opportunities available in this field?
Yeah, thanks. So there's a broad scope. Research is just one aspect of it. There are lots of people who are interested in program implementation. So, for example, say this particular project that I'm working in on child marriage, ending child marriage in Tamil Nadu is the name of the project. So there are people in my team who are experts in program implementation. So what they do is they go onto the field, they conduct training with government stakeholders, they train them on various issues on this topic, child marriage, and that's what they're interested in, field work, basically. So they travel to the field, they meet the public, they meet government stakeholders, they talk to them, interact with them, collect information. Yet others work from the desk, do data analysis. So people are there who have a very good inclination to data. So people who know to use R or Stata or such software, run the numbers beautifully and give us very good statistics to make decisions on. So you can, it's not necessary that you are a researcher. It's not necessary that you have to write papers and publish them. That's only a part of the job. Okay. There are people who can do a multitude of these things, and you can really choose what you're interested in and go for it. So yeah, it's not just about research.
Okay. Again, a related question is, I asked you at the start at the beginning about, how to make this choice, right? How does somebody in college, decide that, hey, this is the career I want to do? And I guess one of the things that I've encountered is that maybe sometimes you learn by doing, right? So are there internship opportunities in this space? Do organizations and such think tanks also hire interns for maybe a couple of months so you can get to see the inside of of workings in the social development space?
Yeah, so public policy is a very sort of young and upcoming sector in India, and organizations today are only blooming in terms of going ahead and working in the space and engaging with the governments frequently.
Right.
There are certain organizations that do offer such internship opportunities. One I can think of immediately on top of my mind is RBI, the Reserve Bank of India. They have an excellent internship program, which is a 6-month long internship, which you can apply to. And they have different branches. They have a finance branch, they have a branch working on statistics, and then they have one on policy side. So people can apply to that kind of a place. Yet again, there are other, if you see, you tend to notice these government organizations themselves quite advertise at times for interns in various departments. I think the central government does it to some extent. They have interns that come in and work. Niti Aayog, India's, think tank, India's government think tank, they have internships. So while there are not as many internship opportunities as there are in probably other fields like engineering or commerce or such, there is still quite a handful of opportunities. Where this comes to more focus when you have a master's with you, at that point of time, you tend to get much broader sort of opportunities. Usually, though, employers who recruit you as your first job do that only when you have a master's background. It is considered as a basic requirement. So that's how it is.
Okay, so what you're saying is that if in order to build a career, you can probably dabble in it by way of internships, but if you're really serious about getting into the field, go pursue a master's in it could be any one of these allied fields, with social development or public policy. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. One other question that's also related to the same discussion is this question of how much work experience does one need? Because we're talking about internships, but once you graduate, is it, and you're thinking of applying, and maybe we'll sort of diverse this from just the social development space and say, if I'm looking at a master's program, right, in either this space or some other, from your experience, how much of an importance does work experience hold, right? Just the fact that you've worked in an organization for a year or so and gained some experience. Is that something that the sector looks at favorably or the university looks at favorably?
So for the university, in my personal case, when I wanted to do my master's, I was thinking of a PhD at some point of time. And I thought a quick master's immediately after my bachelor's makes the best sense for me to continue my education. And then I'll see what I have to do after that.
Right.
But everyone doesn't think the same way. And as far as universities are concerned, when you apply for public policy or economics, largely they don't consider experience to be a basic requirement. People with experience do apply. People come from different backgrounds who have worked with the government or with such public policy organizations for a brief period of time, especially from the Western countries where it's a lot more sort of a sector that is quite popular there. Largely in the case of Indians, as far as I know, people tend to come with no work experience at all. They apply straight after their bachelor's and they get through. So it's not a prerequisite. It's not a requirement. If you want to gather that experience, you can apply to think tanks. You can apply to these kind of the government organizations for internships. But I think that will suffice. In fact, I would recommend that if you're going for internships, you should look at not just think tanks, but sort of a broad spectrum. You're still in your undergraduate. You want to try 2 or 3 different things to know what you really like.
Absolutely.
So different internships help. For a public policy career, it's not necessary that you need to have a public policy internship. You can go and work at Hyundai, for example, and gather some experience there, and that will still be useful in your application.
Absolutely. I think, you make a very, very strong, relevant point here, because most of us seem to have this, this idea that if I'm going to work with the government, then I need to gain experience with the government. And I think that approach is sort of changing in this new India, because more and more we find that, professionals are entering the government, whether in a full-time capacity or as a consultant. And I think the government is actually welcoming that. So in a sense, if you work in the corporate setup and then go and apply for one of these roles with the government, I think it is indeed seen favorably.
Definitely. Yeah, that's true.
All right. So you talked about, you deciding not to, to go for a master straight after your graduation. But help us understand your, the decision-making process at that point in time. Here you are, sort of sure about maybe developmental economics as a choice of subject. But what, geographies did you consider? Did you consider India, or were you set upon studying outside? And when it came to studying outside, did you consider Europe only, or was it only UK, or maybe the US was also in the fray? So help us understand your thinking at that point.
Yeah. So personally, I had ideas of doing it either in India or Europe, which included UK as well.
All right.
So the main thinking for me in terms of looking at Europe and the UK was certain universities and certain professors in such universities whom I have read about and whom I wanted to meet and I wanted to work with. So that was the thinking broadly. I mean, apart from that, I think everyone has to do that basic exercise of looking up at QS rankings or something of that sort to see which are the top ranked universities in terms of their student life, research, a lot of other factors, and also choose based on that. So I had some options in India as well. But Indian application processes obviously differ significantly from what they are abroad. And that's how I did it. I mean, so geographically, I considered Europe and UK. Language was one consideration, but that was not my only consideration. If it was okay for me if I had to, learn a language, but as long as the university was still a good place and I wanted to go there, I was okay with it. So I applied, I think, in those lines only. So I applied to Netherlands, I applied to Switzerland, which didn't speak English, but still. So anyway, that's how I saw it. I did write a couple of exams in India as well, and then I had to make a choice, and I decided to go to the University of Warwick.
Okay. Interesting choice of destinations. I mean, clearly the idea was to stay around, big decision-making centers, right? Whether it was Geneva or London. I guess it helps if you're in the, policy-making sort of space, then it helps if you're around some of these. Was this your thinking, or was this happenstance?
No, this was happenstance. But as you point out, in Switzerland's case, you're absolutely right. Anybody who's working in public policy, anything to do with policy and law and economics, you can just, Switzerland, Geneva is like filled with these international organizations all around you, and you get a lot of on-ground experience and internship opportunities right there under your nose. Same applies to a few other European countries.
Right.
But yeah, that's there.
I think Greta Thunberg has a permanent stall somewhere outside, just outside Geneva, right? Anyway, on a more serious note, so you mentioned applying to these universities, but what were their application requirements like? Because I think a lot of people in India, they fail to recognize this difference between applying to an Indian university and a foreign university, because it seems to be all about grades. It seems to be all about about what you've done in the exams, rather than your choices and your decisions and the way you sort of put them to the adcom, right? So tell us what your experience was like. What do you think the program that you applied to, what are the main considerations when they select a candidate?
Yeah, generally in most foreign universities, how it works is that your primary, your grades are only a component of your selection process. It does not influence all of your selection. What influences your selection is, alongside your grades, the statement of purpose, which you write, where you say why you want to go there, what do you want to study, what is it that interests you, that kind of stuff, and what is your future, what do you think you'll do after that. So that, and then they also ask for letters of recommendation from professors who've taught you in your college, or if you have some work experience from someone in your professional space. So these are some major documents, and some universities also have these exams like GRE and English language requirements. So depending on the requirement of the universities, you have to complete all these processes, and that's how your application goes. What is essential is just your grades don't matter. In the Indian case, I think what is significantly different is that these supporting statements don't matter too much. Most good universities, top universities in Delhi or say these places, have an entrance exam. So as long as you clear the entrance exam, you might have an interview, and if that is cleared, you get your admission. So I think comparatively, marks or your grades make a lesser difference in foreign countries, especially in the UK and Europe. You can also, I mean, how your CV is, what are the kind of activities that you've done in your undergraduation? Have you participated in other things? Have you gone to some, attended some mock UNs or whatever that is? So anything like that, anything that interests you, even sports, for example. So anything of that sort is valued significantly and is taken into consideration for your application. But more than anything else, I think you have to write a very, very good statement. You have to, you have to support yourself and say why you are eligible to study there. And these all make up the requirements for admissions in the UK and Europe. Yeah.
Absolutely spot on, Siddarth. In fact, adding to Siddarth's point here, I think you need to keep in mind that when you're applying to a university outside India, then please make sure that you shed all your modesty. Make sure that you tell them, paint yourself as this very interesting personality with varied interests and avocations. And if you think that you need to make your profile more interesting, I think right now is the time to start, because most times the master's application is not like it's not a 1 month thing that you decide today and you start applying tomorrow. I think you need to think maybe a year or so in advance, plan for, what all activities will I engage in, internships will I do to make my profile stronger. And then, like Siddarth mentioned, also set your mind thinking about the statement of purpose, right? Why do I want to study this program and what do I want to do beyond? Okay, fair point, Siddarth. Let's talk about, just this transition from, India to the UK, right? I'm not sure how many people in the audience have stepped, into that country, but tell us about your experience in the UK. I mean, for most of us based out of Chennai, just, the weather must be something that must have surely troubled you. But anything else that stood apart from your, from your time there?
Well, in terms of experience in the UK, it's only the weather that is cold and damp. The rest of it is sunny and bright. In most of these universities, you live in large student centers. So it's full of students, it's full of young people, international, many people from South Asia as well. So you won't feel too much of a difference really in terms of like your daily life and how you go about it. I mean, the country obviously is for people who are avid travelers, for example, who want to venture out and see the place, it's historical and it's got some beautiful natural significance. So people do that. But purely in terms of academic life, I think that's where the major change comes because of how academics is structured in foreign universities, how they work as against how they do in India. But this is something that's very interesting. I mean, I think Indians would feel it a lot more easier and adjust after going through the difficulty of how courses are in India. You'd go to the UK and think that hey, this is very easy. I have just 2 hours of learning today, just 3 hours tomorrow. I have 2 hours in between. It looks very, very free. What is this 3-hour lunch break suddenly? So that's how it will be. But of course, they are structured very beautifully. And it gives you the best opportunity to also learn by yourself and be trained by the professors and the tutors there.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a great experience. If for people who are bothered about moving to a place of a different culture and a different environment, I don't think there's too much difference as such, because in a quick 1 year or 2 year master's program, I guess most of the time we're focusing on doing well academically, and that's what takes most of your time as well. Apart from that, we'll all be sorted. It'll be a good cooking course for each of us when we go there.
Yes, indeed, indeed. We've all heard these stories from some distant relative or the other. Uh, but I mean, I think it's it's very well appreciated your point about this transition, and I mean, surely academically, I think most of us tend to sort of adjust to it. But I think at the other end is also this this change in the manner in which learning happens, which is a lot more hands-on, a lot more initiative led, and hence a lot more learning oriented rather than just knowledge oriented, right? And from my chats with mentors, I think this is one thing that stands out. You study masters in India, and you'd probably get all the knowledge, but and I'm not saying this as a general statement about India, but the overwhelming feedback about universities abroad seems to be that it's a lot more involving and elicits an interest in the subject itself. Is that also something that you'd agree with?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you think in terms of like the kind of assignments that they give you, what they grade you on, I mean, it's not always a final exam that counts.
Right.
You know, a lot of other activities around your course,
Right.
where you do some assignments, you take some tests on the computer. All these counts towards your total learning experience. And the way it is that sometimes it's these professors who can design it the way they want. So then it works very, very flexibly, and some of them are really good teachers. So it also depends on the individual experience that you gain from each person. You have something or the other to learn from each person who comes and teaches you. Recently, I mean, of late, especially in the public policy space, a handful of Indian universities as well, I mean, have adopted very flexible and easy, nice learning methods. So there is that scope for that in India as well today.
Any that off the top of your mind you you like or you are particularly impressed by?
Multiple these institutes, which there's Ashoka, which offers a liberal arts and policy program.
Right.
And there is the Azim Premji University, and then there is this Kriya University that is near Chennai, actually, which is actually managed by Raghuram Rajan, who's the mentor of that university. All these places are quite very open and free thinking, as you want to call it, more aligned to how it is in UK and Europe in terms of learning and teaching, and a completely different style to what it is in probably most bachelor's experience in India.
Okay, fair enough. I think there's also this elephant in the room we need to address, right? Because deciding about masters surely is about what you learn, but it's also about how much you spend and what you get in return, right? So there is ROI, which is a big consideration for all of us, because you think about studying in the UK, and already you can hear the pounds sort of weighing you down. So how does one plan for a career after a master's? And I mean, I'm sure you also thought this through when you went to the UK about, is public policy or the social development space an area where I can find employment in the UK, or did you already know that, hey, I'm going to go there, come back and find a job here? I mean, how is it that you reconciled to this aspect?
Yeah, in my personal case, I think I always wanted to come back to India and do something, and then figure out what I wanted to do next from there. But of course, thinking about possible career options in the UK for this way, I mean, in UK in general itself, I mean, if not just public policy, but multiple other sectors, jobs for Indians is not as popular as it is in the US or the rest of the Europe as well. Maybe.
Even after Brexit?
Possibly now, with the visa extension, it means that you can stay longer and look for opportunities.
And also that because now Europeans don't get free pass inside. In fact, they need to pay for their visa, and employers might not might not really hold Europeans in high esteem as compared to Indians. So just does that change the balance of preference?
It does to some extent. Yes, it does. But again, I mean, when you study in the UK, it also means that you can apply to anywhere in the globe. I mean, it's not necessary that you have to look there for jobs. Your academic background, the university you've studied in, will give you that sort of a background through which you can apply to many other places around the globe. And I think on those lines, another line of thought is people who want to be in the academic life and want to go ahead and do a PhD. So then you spend for your master's initially, and then when you apply for a PhD, in most cases it comes with a decent amount of funding. So not only is your tuition fee covered, in large cases you do get a stipend also throughout your course. So you are continuing your education, but you also earn some form of income. So that's one way to see it. Apart from that, I mean, coming again to the point of spending money, there's also scholarships in these universities. So some of most universities in the UK, as far as I know, offer an India-specific scholarship that is offered by the university. So these are for Indian students who have a very good application and who demonstrate their requirement for funding, and the university considers it, and on a merit basis they offer scholarships to Indian students.
Okay. Do they also offer need-based scholarships?
Both. They offer need-based scholarships as well as merit-based scholarships. But apart from that, even other individual scholarships are there that are, some of them are government tied up between government of UK and government of India. Yet others are private scholarships that if you do a cursory Google search, you'll understand of the kind of scholarships there are. A few of them require some work experience, but some of them don't. So based on, I mean, what universities do is, if you the best place to go is the website of the university that you're looking for. I mean, they list all kinds of scholarships available, and one can read about all of that and understand and target one particular scholarships that that someone wants to apply to. So that's there.
Okay.
Yeah. So of course, I'm talking about one side of it. So people who study in this space also sometimes tend to go to the corporate sector. The Big Four, for example, they have a policy side as well. I mean, they advise the government, and they support the government in various research consultancy.
Right.
So when you go to these kind of places, I mean, they offer very competitive salaries, and if that's the career you're after in the corporate sector, you can do that as well. So that'll serve as like
there's also a very niche field within consulting today, which goes by impact consulting, where most of the consulting that they do is for organizations to create social impact. And so that's also basically you're not working with the NGO, you're working on the consultant side. You're gaining exactly the experience that somebody in the Big Three or the Big Four would gain, but you're creating much more impactful sort of on ground impact.
Right.
All right. So that makes a lot of sense, Sriram. The other question I wanted to ask you, with regards to profile building, right, is are there? I mean, in today's world, I think everything that we learn has become online, right? You're attending lectures online. You're training yourself on R or other, programming languages and data science. All of these on MOOCs, right, online. Are there opportunities or courses available on these MOOCs and other such online platforms that students can possibly attend? Because to my mind, I think an online course also means that it gives me the chance to read up and experience and understand that field before I can commit for a 1-year master's in person. So are there courses available that you would recommend?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, while I can't point out to exact courses, I'll tell you my personal experience is I took a course on calculus on Coursera, because the mathematics at the university level that I did, I needed more sort of experience in terms of mathematics for my master's application, which I came to know because of the mathematics requirements for an economics degree. And this is specific to economics degree, not something that's for public policy or development. It's not necessary. But if you're doing a master's in economics, absolutely, you need to have a decent amount of mathematical background. Correct. So I took up a course offered by the University of Pennsylvania online on calculus. And I think that significantly helped me in my application. Okay. But this was almost 5 years ago. So if you think of it today, Coursera, edX, and even Government of India's Swayam is a platform which offers many such courses. So these are things that students can do in their weekends. They can take 1 hour a day and watch a video and learn concepts and gain some knowledge on it and earn a certificate. And these definitely help in your application. So I would urge everyone, purely in terms of public policy, if you need an introduction, there are many introductory public policy courses which are free. which people can subscribe to and take on Coursera, edX, such platforms. And I think that will give, it has two benefits. Like you mentioned, I think it gives you an introduction into what this is about, what you'll be learning if you're going to take a master's on this.
Sure.
And secondly, it'll help your CV and your application process as well.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. And I think a third benefit is that you get to sound knowledgeable when you either in an interview or in a one-on-one conversation with an expert. I mean, you just show that you have cultivated an interest by reading up, by attending a course, right? And that's sometimes that can be, just invaluable in terms of first impressions. Okay, before I think I have pretty much asked all the questions I had in my mind with regard to this space. I really think the audience need to sort of step up at this point. Guys, if you have any questions, start shooting them in the chat window. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to ask one last question that comes up to my mind, which is, tell us more about your cohort, right? The students that studied with you at Warwick. What nationalities were they from, and B, also talk about outcomes in the same perspective, right? So where did the cohort, where did they end up a year or so after graduating from Warwick? Were they did they head back to their country of destination origin, or did some of them indeed find employment within Europe?
Yeah, so I studied in a class of nearly 230 people. So it's a huge class, but when you study your optional modules, it obviously gets divided. There are so many options to choose from, and then your class becomes 15, 20 or something like that.
Correct.
But your broad sort of master's in economics itself is those many people. And there would have been at least 60 or 70 countries that would have been represented in that classroom. So it's a very multicultural atmosphere. People who have no work experience. Sorry.
Does it intimidate you at first?
Maybe initially, when you're meeting so many people and you don't, each one has their own sort of cultural upbringing, and you take time to adjust and understand with each other. And that's when it helps, where you easily tag along with your other South Asian buddies and go along and chat with them. And then you slowly get used to the rest of the people and develop good. But universities tend to create these sort of events where you mingle with these students 2 or 3 times before your course also begins. So you get opportunity to talk to each of them and understand what background they are coming from and things like that. So I don't think it's too much of an intimidation after the initial first few days. You'll get used to it, and you'll find good friends all around the globe for you. So yeah, that's how multicultural it was. In terms of where they're working, one more thing I wanted to add was people also come with different kinds of work experience with them. So there are people who come in with zero work experience, and I was also studying with people in their 30s or 40s who were having 10, 15 years work experience and decided to a master's after that, gaining that much work experience. So it's a place of like learning, not just from the teachers or the professors who teach you, but also from your fellow cohorts who have so many experiences to share with you about their career and how life is in their country and how studying economics or public policy is in their country. So you learn all that. And lastly, one thing is that where they go on to work, many of them work in these international think tanks. People work in WTO, World Bank, UNICEF, and all these organizations where you go as research consultants or just project consultants. Yet others work in the corporate sector, like consulting. Many people who have a finance background tend to work in all of these finance-based companies and these banks, private banks. And so yet others choose to do PhD. There would be about at least 10 or 15% of the class who would be interested in doing PhD and go ahead and do PhD in many places around the globe. So multiple options, people choose different things, but generally at the end, everyone tends to get to where they want to.
Correct. And I think it was a previous session that we did with, did about networking, and it's a point that sort of comes up every now and then when I speak to mentors who've gone abroad, is that the real value of a master's program is always the network that you build, right? The people and relationships that you cultivate, because I mean, I think those networks can come to use 3 years, 5 years, 10 years hence. And yeah, I mean, the fact that you study with a multicultural cohort and multidisciplinary cohort as well, and the fact that some of them end up, into to put it, I mean, to put it mildly, go into sort of aspirational places like the WTO or the UNICEF, and I think it's invaluable. And I think if, for this young an audience that's listening in, I think if I want to leave an impression with you guys, it's that, I mean, you should start networking from day one. I think if you know somebody, and I think that's also partly what we at Network Mentors Capital are trying to do, is that giving you access to a network which sort of disseminates information that otherwise might not reach you, right? So please make use of networks around you, and if needed, tap into our network, and we'll be sure to help you out along the way.